Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Friday and welcome to Daily Dose. Let's get right to it. I think we have 6 pretty good questions to wrap up an excellent week of content. So we are finally done. Can you believe we started talking about Limitless? That means 5 weeks ago. That's how fast this time has gone.
That's fast.
Crazy. From the book Limitless, a wrap up. We can fixate on getting to the goal, but what if the actual win is what happens past that? For example, the women who were climbing to the top of Everest were literally feet from the top when they realized they had to go down, because the win was actually not getting to the top. The win was getting back down again alive. So where do you need to stop fixating on the goal and think about what's beyond that? Because that's actually where life goes on and where you have your own kinds of wins. Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, there's lots of things to say about that in terms of addiction, and never give up, learn what you've experienced and think about what you've learned along the way to help you move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
We moving on?
Yes.
Okay.
We're moving on.
Next question. Eckhart Tolle says the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Be aware of the thoughts you are thinking. Separate them from the situation, which is always neutral, which always is as it is. Where do you need to reflect on this to move forward? So let me give you a specific example of this, because this might have been very, very helpful for me when Maz was drinking. Maybe I've talked about this, but we had some friends who sort of brought out, I would say, the basest level of use, sort of the lowest form of humor, not like mean about other people, but kind of crude humor, and they loved it, and I hated it. It embarrassed me. It made me feel like it was a reflection on me that I had married someone who was willing to take that stance with humor. And my friend used to say to me, it's not about you. Maz is funny because Maz is funny, and it's no reflection on you because it's not about you. And if I had been able to remember that the situation was not how I felt about it, the situation was the situation, and how I felt about it was something different. If I could have separated the two, I may have been less high-strung about it, less agitated about it, because it wasn't me making the jokes, and you're free to do what you want to do. But I wanted to control the situation and sort of dictate the narrative. So I think this is really a powerful thing to think about. You know, think about those mothers whose children are having the tantrum in the grocery store, who on one hand appear to have absolutely no care in the world about it, which I learned from my mother is the wrong response. You should care, you should manage that child and take them out, which is absolutely how she would have handled it and how I handled it. But that mother is sort of saying, this is not my problem. Now, unfortunately, the rest of us have to deal with it too. But do you know what I mean? There's something sort of powerful about a woman who just says, it's not my tantrum. I'm kind of in admiration of that if you think of it from this stance.
That makes sense.
Yeah, when Bonnie watches this later, she will comment that is the wrong response, but it's okay. It's all right. It's just, it's an interesting example.
Read from that what you will. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We'll just go with that.
Yeah.
You don't need to respond so quickly.
So I was clearing the throat. Yeah.
Second Tolle quote. Life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having at the moment. We talked about this on Tuesday, and I said, I'm a much better person for having gone through this experience with Maz. I'm much less judgmental, I'm much more patient, I'm much more empathetic, I am much more open to struggle than I certainly was before, and you also seconded that for yourself.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't recommend it as a way to find your true self. It worked for me, but
yeah.
It's in extreme circumstances. But again, you don't have to be an addict. Take time to think what your actions are and what you actually would like to be perceived by. It's self-reflection without having to end up in hospital is
Yeah.
also powerful.
So really the question is, what experiences do you need to shift the lens on? Rather than viewing it as a negative, how can you see it as a positive? Or as a curse, how can it be a blessing? There is a flip side, a light side to every shadow side. So where can you stop and find the good? It doesn't mean you don't also acknowledge the bad. There are not lots of times, but there are times where I still say to you, I wish we could share a bottle of wine together. That's not the dark side. It's just the reality of our relationship. Other couples get to go out and celebrate an anniversary, for instance, and order a really beautiful bottle of wine. We don't. Gosh, is that price worth what I have? Of course it is. Would I trade all of this to have the old Maz who could drink wine with me? Absolutely not. I'm just telling you that in the midst of all of this joy and blessing, there's also sadness and downside. There's an island, just quickly, there's an island off the coast of Scotland whose entire industry is tourism through all of the whiskey, are those called factories? Distilleries. Whiskey distilleries, because they make the great majority of the Scottish whiskey. I want desperately to go there. Guess what? I don't drink whiskey, never have. Maz can't drink whiskey. Why would we go there?
Just for the boat ride and the scenery.
Yep, but I don't know what else we would do, since we would not be doing these 6 distillery tours.
We would confuse the bejesus out of the distillers, that'll be for sure.
Yes, so it's probably a place we'll never go. I have a little sadness about that. Not so much sadness.
Well, we can bring a couple of people with us who drink whiskey and then just sit back and enjoy them enjoying it.
I guess, but you know, there's joy and sadness to all things. All right. David Whitesock of Commonly Well's post about community asks us to consider where community becomes limiting versus limitless. Do you belong to groups that shy away from thinking differently, challenge the status, that don't want you to challenge the status quo, etc.? And the question really becomes, are those groups still serving you? And they might be. There's no shame in saying, I find terrific joy, strength, community in this group of people. We're not trying to discourage you from that. But if it's not serving you, if it's asking you to keep small instead of being big, or it's telling you to think a certain way and you feel a different way, then I think it's time to really assess the group. You have often referenced that there are a lot of AA groups that simply do not work for you.
Yeah.
That's fine. They work for other people.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not condemning them.
Right.
It's just, and that's the point I'd like to keep going back to stressing. You know, don't give up if you go to an AA group and you don't like it. There's at least 100 more in Fargo Moorhead alone.
Yeah, and every community has them. So where can you find a group of people who lift you up, encourage you to be your best self, even if it doesn't always ascribe to the commonalities of the group?
Yeah.
Dr. Julie Blehm. Dr. Julie Blehm, thank you first of all for joining us yesterday, and Mary too.
Thank you.
What a great conversation.
Yes,
wow.
It was.
Thinking about it all day yesterday. But Julie and Mary reminded us that there is still a huge stigma around most mental health issues. Are there places that you can help to normalize mental health by talking about it, sharing your story, reaching out to others, and just in general, not shying away from it? Nobody judges a diabetic. Nobody judges somebody who says, I've got, you have a faulty, what's your thing? Thyroid. Sorry.
I have an underactive thyroid.
Yeah.
It's not, let's not label it faulty.
Well, you had to take medicine for it.
Yes.
If you say that to people, they don't go, oh, and immediately assume that you did something wrong because you have a underactive thyroid. I mean, I judge it, but nobody else does.
No, good Lord.
I don't
judge faulty thyroids at all. Yeah.
But the question becomes, why is having a faulty thyroid totally acceptable to talk about, but being a recovering alcoholic still brings shame to it. And I'm not saying that you feel that way about it, but there is still this stigma around it. And in some cases, it's as simple as, like Julie was talking about, if you are getting recertified in your medical licensure, and that you used to have to list that you were in treatment. Well, that's hugely discouraging of saying to doctors, please go get help. We don't want to lose you in the profession. We want to help you. I had a call yesterday, and you don't know these details, but I had a call yesterday from a businessman who has an employee going through some alcohol challenges. And he wanted to know from Maz and me how he could be a better employer to this employee. Which, first of all, I thought was just astonishing. Second of all, I felt wholly unqualified to address. So I did the only thing I could think of, which was to connect him to many of the guests that we've had who would be far, far more able to help him. But one thing we talked about was, could this employer send out a very generic memo to all of the employees of this business and simply say this: we want you to be in community together outside of work if you want to. For instance, we want you to go to happy hours together if happy hours help you stay connected as humans who happen to work together. But we want you to be very mindful of the fact that not everyone who's with you is comfortable in a bar or can comfortably drink. So can you all consider letting all judgment go if somebody's drinking a Coke, if somebody orders a non-alcoholic beer, if there's access to one, if somebody's just drinking water, if somebody gets a coffee, can you not say to them, hey man, what's up? Can you just let it go? Because that will help everybody feel like they belong. Whether they can drink and choose not to, whether they can't drink and don't want to feel peer pressure, whether, who cares why someone's not drinking? Can you just, as the employer, remind everybody to just not ask somebody why they're not drinking?
Yeah.
That's a pretty simple move to make. We'll see if it works. Last question. Do you have anything to add to that?
It is very interesting. Even just going out to we used to take research when I worked. Our research students at the end of the academic year, we used to take them out to, it was nothing fancy. We took them to Buffalo Wild Wings. And then if the people who didn't order a beer and then someone wanted to, I could hear them say, oh, I'll have to get a Coke then, I can't be that person. And I used to say to them, I got a Diet Coke because I was driving. And the whole thing of I didn't want anyone to see me drink because I wanted to do that at home. But I even had to say to the students, it's fine if you want to drink. And it was almost the opposite of what Dana just said. But yeah. They judge themselves. In this instance, they didn't want to be the person to be seen having a drink, and then if that's not the norm is you go out and people say, why aren't you drinking? And I've actually seen people that to me it actually seems like they're concerned for you, that you might be ill,
right?
If you're not
drinking.
If you're not drinking.
So yeah, I think that's a really easy shift, is to just move from questioning why someone isn't drinking to just making it a non-issue. Do you care what's in my mug? It's tea, but do you really care what's in my mug versus what's in Maz's mug? I don't think you do. So at happy hour, people can drink what they want to drink and just let it go at that.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I know, it was the only good advice I felt like I gave, and it kind of came to me in a spur of a moment.
That's very good advice, Dee.
Thank you. Last question. Julie and Mary, I think, so exquisitely embody living in joy after tragedy, which they have both lived through.
My gosh, yes, they both do.
The question for you is, are you holding on to grief, shame, or tragedy in ways that are holding you back? Are you missing out on life because you are stuck in the moment of tragedy? Maz and I could have stayed in that really toxic place that we were before he got sober, because I could have been afraid to trust that he was going to stay sober. He could have been afraid that I was going to trust him, and we could have stayed in that cycle and missed out on all of this incredible life that we've had.
Yeah.
Sorry. Because we chose to move on from tragedy and to see where it took us. Does it mean we'll never confront another tragedy? Of course not.
No.
Of course not. But it means that in this moment, we're choosing to live joyfully in the life that we have, as opposed to reflecting back, even though almost every day on Daily Dose we do reflect back in some sort of way.
In that respect, it's kind of healthy to do that, but I want to say not too much. That sounds a bit lame. But
Well,
don't dwell. But if you
in
can admit it,
proportion.
if you can admit it because you've learned something from it and you want to pass on something that might be useful, that's different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you are someone who celebrates Easter weekend, happy Easter weekend. This is a big holiday, obviously, in the Christian world. And if it is just Friday for you, happy Friday. It's going to be beautiful weather in Fargo-Moorhead. I hope it's going to be beautiful where you are too.
If you're learning about Christianity and you want to know what the link is between an egg made out of chocolate and the rise of Jesus Christ, there isn't one. I can't explain it to you, and I'm a Catholic.
Yeah, it's called capitalism, I believe. So
Just if someone offers you a bit of chocolate, say thank you.
say thank you. Move on. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Bye.
Bye.